It's time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life in France with Florence Villeminot.
Hey, Jeannie.
Hi, Flo. So much of the attention has been on the French presidential election in recent months, but that's actually not the only electoral rendezvous of the year. Coming up very soon is what's been dubbed the third round of this presidential election.
France is gearing up for its parliamentary elections in June, and analysts say they're just as important as the presidential elections. Now, what's at stake are the 577 seats in the lower house of parliament, the Assemblée nationale. Now, what you need to know is France is divided into 577 constituencies. 566 seats are actually in France itself, and you can see them all here. It kind of looks like a puzzle. And on top of that, there are 11 constituencies for French citizens living outside of France.
Now, we're not going to focus on the political horse trading in this segment. Tell us more, though, about how this election actually takes place, because there are literally thousands of people running.
There are tons of people running. If you take a look at the previous parliamentary elections in 2012, there were over 6,500 candidates, so an average of 11 candidates per constituency. It gets quite busy. Now, like presidential elections, parliamentary elections take place every 5 years and usually in 2 rounds, but not always. In some cases, one candidate could get the absolute majority in the first round of the election, and that first round is scheduled for June 11th, and in that case, the candidate is directly elected MP, but it's pretty rare. In most cases, no candidate gets the absolute majority, and so a runoff is held a week later. That's scheduled for June 18th.
And unlike the presidential election, it's not the 2 candidates with the best score who make it to the second round.
To qualify for the second round of the parliamentary elections, you have to make 12.5% of the votes in the first round. That means it's not uncommon to have 3 candidates in the runoff. And this, as you can imagine, there's a word for this scenario in French. It's called a triangulaire. More rare are the quadrangulaire, the 4-way runoffs. But you'll hear a lot about triangulaire during the parliamentary elections, and they often involve a member from the far-right National Front, and therefore they can lead to a lot of drama over whether one of the other candidates should drop out of the runoff in the name of the Pacte républicain, this thing we've already talked about in French Connections, this tacit agreement that exists between the left and the right to block the far-right National Front. Now, to win the second round of the parliamentary election, you don't need to get a majority, you just need to get the most votes. And fun fact is, if 2 candidates have the exact same amount of votes, it's the oldest one who wins.
Oh, nice to know seniority has its role. Now, despite being very important, the parliamentary elections being very important, the turnout actually tends to be quite low for France.
And it has plummeted over the past couple of decades. For instance, if you look at the turnout in 2012, it was just over 57%, which is low for France. And now, a lot of that has to do with the electoral calendar, because parliamentary elections come so shortly after the presidential election, and so a lot of people just suffer from election fatigue. Let's listen to some reactions from previous elections.
It's going to be a long day. It's 8:20 and we only have a dozen votes. That's not a lot.
It could be the weather, or people are fed up. They're tired of so many elections. They've had enough. It's too bad. I hope the turnout will be higher in round 2.
People don't talk so much about the parliamentary elections, not as much as the presidential race. But it's the parliamentary election that matters.
I believe that if I don't vote, I'm not allowed to complain.
Do keep in mind, though, that things could be very different this year, because we're seeing such a shake-up in French politics that interest in the parliamentary election could be quite high, which means that the turnout could be quite high, too.
For political parties involved in this, there's a real incentive to having a maximum number of candidates elected, and it's not just about weighing in on policymaking.
There's a major financial incentive, because French political parties do get a lot of money from contributions from their party members or private donations, but those are capped at 7,500 euros per individual per year. The bulk of money for French political parties actually comes from the state, but that amount of money depends on the score they have in the first round of the parliamentary election and how many MPs are elected. Now, the math is a little tricky. It essentially works like this. For each vote, they get on average €1.42 if they get 1% of votes in 50 constituencies. And for each MP elected, they get just over 37,000 euros a year. Now, as you can imagine, it adds up. The state gives money, but it also takes it away. In France, there is a law forcing all parties to include equal numbers of men and women on party lists for elections, and those who don't meet the target are fined.
Well, immediately after they are elected, these MPs head to the Palais Bourbon in the heart of Paris, which is the building where the National Assembly is located, for what's essentially a sort of class orientation.
It's quite cute, actually, and you can see reports about their orientation on TV. Essentially, they show up at the Palais Bourbon and they're given a tour, shown the ropes, if you will. They get to take an official picture in the National Assembly, and they're even given a goodie bag that includes everything they need to be an MP.
So what's in the bag?
That's her tricolour sash. As a local official, she wore the blue on top. Now that she's an MP, she'll wear the red on top.
You get a tricolour sash. This is what we call the barometer. It's something you wear at official ceremonies. I don't wear it, but new MPs like to wear it. You put this here on your lapel. People know me in my constituency, so I don't wear it.
I must admit that's a pretty cool sash, one of the many perks of being a French MP, but I'll have to explore that in another episode of French Connection.
Florence Villeminot, thank you so much. 577 seats up for grabs. We'll see where that will bring us. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching French Connections. Don't forget, if you want to ask Flo any questions about the French political process or about France in general, send her a tweet at Flo Villeminot.